To be fair, Rosie asked me to give a special presentation, and I had a choice, and I chose to talk about single-cell RNA and cell heterogeneity, but I'd also listed a bunch of other things, and she chose this one. So I was kind of excited, but then after following those two, I'm really glad I'm giving another talk. So my disclosures are that I actually like my job, and I'm not going to necessarily be able to answer everything for everybody, but I like all the different things about my job. I like research, I like education, I really, really like to operate. I like clinic on Mondays, I sort of hate clinic on Wednesdays. I don't know why it's different, but my Wednesday clinic is very different than my Monday clinic. And I also wear a lot of different hats. I do have 5 children. They're in 5 different schools this year. So if you want a nightmare, I will be leaving early from the next session because I have to hit 3 of the schools to pick them up. I have one wife. I do lots of sports stuff. We'll get to that later. I do some education stuff. I run a research lab, and I do other things. And I'm sure, like most of us, we're more busy. And the further we get in our careers, the busier we get. If you want to make your job better, but you're in the back and you're really just here to check on your apex and you didn't want to be sitting in your office, these are the things I'm going to hit. These are the things I think are going to make you feel like you like your job better. Sometime in the next week, say yes to something when somebody asks. Check in with your mentor, mentees. We're all part, or most of us are part of mentor colleges. Check in with somebody. Pass something on to a junior colleague. This is not for the R5s and R4s. That does not count at all. You don't pass things on to your juniors. Try something new. Talk to a patient in a different manner, politely, not in a mean way, but try describing something in a different way. Try a new surgery. It'll make you feel better. Try to get involved in some sort of research that you didn't think you had time for. And then, since we're getting to the end of the year, look back at your year and ask what actually went well. For those of you that want to put Apex away, true or false, the average person works harder and longer hours now than they did 50 years ago. So raise your hand if that's true. Nah, we don't work nearly as hard as we used to. Now Germany takes the cake. I mean, this is pretty awesome. So Germany starts at 2,400 hours. They barely work now. But we've had a steady decrease. And what's more is we've doubled the amount of vacation time that we have over the last 40 years as well. So we're not working as much and we're taking more vacation. So are we more or less happy in medicine than we were 30, 40 years ago? Yeah, we're less happy. Now the good thing is orthopedic surgeons kind of fall right in the middle. We get paid a lot. This is there's lots of different ways to look at this, but the percent burnt out, there's not a lot of difference. We're all sort of burnt out. You're in opto or derm, you're not that burnt out. If you're over here, you're more burnt out, and you're unsatisfied over here. So we're kind of in the middle. We're kind of burnt out. We're kind of dissatisfied. We're kind of not that exciting for this. Any talk about work-life balance is going to have to talk about burnout. And I think these are the things that I think are most pertinent for this talk. It's more common in faculty than it is in residence. So as bad as you feel in residency, it gets worse in terms of how you feel about your job. I think most importantly are the next 4. We don't seek advice when we feel burnt out. We sit there, we take it. We tend to feel isolated when we are burnt out. Again, we don't talk to anybody about it. We don't tell anybody else how we feel. Especially the younger generation, which is 45 and younger, are more likely to turn to substance abuse rather than turning to a therapist. It's more common in women than men, considerably more. Work hours is not usually the issue, and EHRs are associated with more burnout. I put cause, that may or may not be true. There are innumerable papers to read about burnout. I'm not going to go through much of this, but I thought this graphic was really interesting, especially in light of this talk. So if you look at physician burnout, we know that patients don't do as well when you're not feeling yourself, but the career disengagement, poor career development, job satisfaction all happen when you're burnt out. The problem is we all chose to have a really hard, challenging job because way back when we thought that this was going to be cool. And I would argue it really still is. I mean, I think it is a wonderful thing to let whichever fellow this was do something next to Dr. Zhang. And Dr. Zhang's actually letting him do something, which is really cool. So can we be happy at work? And if you look at over and over, whether it's in medicine or in other fields, these are the things that come up as the most important things for career satisfaction. You need to be intellectually stimulated. You need to have peer and mentor groups. You need to have a sense of fairness and equity, which is especially challenging in orthopedic surgeons because for mostly worse, everybody looks like me in the senior management, so it's hard to have that feeling of equity and fairness automatically. You need to have the ability to innovate and create. You need to feel like you can be advanced, and you have to have this feeling of balance. And a lot of this goes through this idea of mattering, that there is an importance of either feeling valued or bringing value to other people in your life. And for us, in a certain sense, we take the patient part for granted. Also, thank you for the VA pictures. It's always a good sign that if I can be in the OR working on a talk and taking pictures of the residents and nothing went wrong, and thanks to Charlie and Ryan who tell me that proximal humerus still looks okay. So the overarching rule of this talk, in order to be happy, is you have to deliberately think about this and try in the different facets of your job to be happy. So this guy is responsible for all of your kids not having fun playing sports, but he can be responsible for you enjoying your job a little bit better. And I would encourage you to think about something you do really well in your job. And for most of us, that's surgery. For Chris, Tamara, that may be a certain part of research. For me, I think I'm really good at ACL surgery. I'm really good at instability. I really try hard. I deliberately try to get better, faster, smoother with my techniques. There's a subset of things that I kind of don't practice too much. So I'll do them, but for those of you that have done hip fractures with me, I kind of sit in the back. I don't pay too much attention. I really, really hope you guys know what you're doing. I don't try too hard to make myself a better apexer. And then I really am well below the suck threshold for C-spine. For everything else, you really want, for some of the things that you do well in, to emphasize this and really try to emphasize being better at the other parts of your job. I'm not going to go into this too much, but I think this is a really nice way of how I like to think. I didn't draw this, although they look like my clinic drawings. This is the steps of deliberate practice, but when you think about how you learned how to do surgery, you often started with a goal. We ask the residents, what are your goals for the procedure? We don't ask you to memorize it all. We want you to break it down into little steps. We ask you to kind of push yourself in the OR and then get feedback. And those 4 steps for all other aspects, not only you can take what made you a good surgeon, good clinician, good scientist, but if you apply that to your other responsibilities, may allow you to enjoy work a little bit better. So these, if I had 6, I think I have 7 steps. These are the things that I think are really important. So most importantly, learn to say yes, but equally importantly, know when to say no. When you learn to say yes, anything in green is probably going to be turned up. You're going to be intellectually stimulated, whether you do a new harder case, you may join a new group, new mentor groups, you'll get a sense of equity and fairness, you'll be able to challenge others to do that as well. You have the ability to innovate and create, but you're at the risk of losing that balance. So how many of you have said something, so you've said yes to something because you felt obligated to, somebody told you that you've got a cool research project, and then you regret it afterwards? If you haven't, you're lying. Okay. So when I say yes to something, I actually try to put a fair amount of thought into it. Is it something that I want to do? Is it something that's going to bring me, selfishly, some sort of professional or personal gain? Otherwise, I don't want to do it. I'm busy enough. And will it help others around me, or will it help some others around me? So this is a good example. I tried to pick some recent examples that would make this relevant. So Chelsea and Ralph came to our lab group and said, can we meet to talk about one of your lab tools to look at gait patterns after injury? I'm like, oh shit, I've got a lot of meetings coming up. Inman Abbott's coming up. I have to give this talk. But is it something I want to do? Well, I really like new research. I'm captivated by new techniques. You probably saw from the last techniques, every one of those slides had a new technique or something that was exciting. I'm a sucker for really expensive new technology. Those mouse paws would cost me $70,000. So yeah, I am meeting with them next week. In terms of, no, actually tomorrow. Is it going to bring me professional gain? Well, I don't know. But the person who came to talk to us worked in Alan Bausbaum's lab. He works with a former Nobel Prize winner, or I guess you're always a Nobel Prize winner. I really want a Nobel Prize. Probably not going to get one, so I want to meet somebody that has one. So yeah, I'm going to get professional gain, and it's going to help others around me. It's going to help me, it's going to help our lab, it'll help build a collaboration, and it'll help these postdocs. So this is something I said yes to and don't really feel bad about it. But once I say yes to it, I do set some sort of limit. So when anything I've said yes to for a national committee, I ask, how long is this for? I want to know, is this a 1-year commitment, 3-year commitment, 5-year commitment? Because when that changes, that's going to change my algebra in whether or not I'm going to want to do it. Once I do it, what are the benefits? I kind of constantly reassess, and I don't procrastinate. We'll get to that later, especially for the little things we say yes to. You have to just do it. If you do it, but then put it off, it doesn't count because it's just going to build up. And then afterwards, I reflect on, did I like it? Is it worth doing it again? Invariably, that usually leads to more research projects and fewer administrative things because I really like the research things. Now, what is something that you've said no to that nobody ever remembers that you said no to? Thank you for We're the Millers, and apparently Eric Hansen has the same tattoo. So we've all had something that we've said no to that we felt really bad to, and especially as residents, you feel so horrible when we ask you, can you do a research project? You end up saying yes, Fabian, and you didn't want to do it, and yet you still did it, and then I had to talk to you at the VA. And the overriding thing is just say no. You're going to feel so much better, okay? When you say no, you still get intellectual stimulation because it's the value over the replacement thing that you put in that spot. You said no to something for a reason. You'll also promote equity and fairness. Just because you said no, that's going to allow somebody else to do it, and you're going to really achieve that feeling of balance. It feels great to say no to something, okay? So this is a good example from a few weeks ago. Dr. Levine emailed me, this is the worst thing you can have it say, is it's a great opportunity, which means do it. And I looked at it, I was like, I really don't have time, but I bet somebody else does. So I said, Bill, thank you so much, I'm honored. Let me give you the names of a few other people that I think. And he didn't email me back, which is either really good or really bad. So when I say no, I try not to say no right away, especially in leadership. I think it's so easy when somebody comes with an idea, you're just like, nah, it's not a good idea. Try not to do that. Try to think, well, let me think about it. Let me think about it for 24 hours, because then you'll get a sense of, is there somebody else that might be able to do it for me, with me, or better than me? And then what is the value lost when we say no? Well, there's usually not that much, and the value gain to other facets of life are really huge. Now, where does this mostly come up for surgeons? Well, it comes with doing that add-on case. So this example I continually bring up. I gave this talk for peds, and the same week I had to do this case. Somebody said they needed me to do a quad tendon repair. I am not needed to do a quad tendon repair, but I added it on when the person had COVID, so we had to do it at Mount Zion. We needed a special room. 4 p.m. became 7 p.m., and I made $490, of which I'll never see because I don't even know if I collected or billed it right. Well, that's the value added at the end of the day. That sucked. Well, what about the value if I had passed that on to Dr. Wong? Well, Dr. Wong makes less RVUs than me. She would have had better OR time the following day. I would have gained time with my wife. It happens on a Wednesday. The miracle of 5 kids is we have no kids on Wednesday evenings. I gave up a night with my wife. I would have been able to do the things I normally do to get ready for a research day on Thursday, and I could have let somebody else grow. And so often we're chasing that one extra case, and at the end of the day or week, may not be all that helpful, and certainly at the end of the year, it's not that helpful. So this time, when Dr. Center asked me, can I add on a quad tendon or a pec tendon repair, I was like, no. Can I have Dr. Lansdowne do it? And thankfully, I've got nice partners, and Dr. Lansdowne said what he almost always says is, yes, I can. So I feel like I helped Drew, I helped myself, I was happy, patient was happy. Drew hopefully was happy. Hopefully. Okay, second thing, keep your interest broad. So one of my general principles is that on any given day, clinic can suck, but if I had a good OR day, that's fine. Research, usually always pretty awesome. So if I can balance some research with a mediocre day in the OR, things are gonna balance out. So keep your interest broad. Now the problem with keeping your interest broad is that even though it checks all these boxes, we tell you the exact opposite. You spend your entire life being well-rounded and trying to do everything. You did research, you did education, you did outreach, and then you become a faculty member, and we say, don't do all that. We really want you to narrow it down. And Drew came to me, sorry to pick on Drew so much, and he said, look, people keep telling me to narrow down, but every time I look around, everybody who's above me hasn't narrowed down. And I would agree, because when I look at people above Drew, I haven't narrowed down, Ben hasn't narrowed down, and I look at this guy, has he done all these things? Yeah, and he's done it pretty well enough that way back when, he was an elite reviewer. So he's did the research thing pretty well. He's been an innovator. He's invented things. He's a mentor to pretty much everybody in the room. He's a management leader, was. Now, I did want to point out his research is very broad. He's done stuff on point of care motion, but if we look further back, he's done some stuff on fatty infiltration. So we will get him in the lab. And his first paper ever was on meniscus repair. So we really learned that he missed his calling. But I would argue he never really necessarily said, I'm only going to be a one-tool person. I might emphasize different tools at different times of my career, but I'm always going to have the skill set to maintain. Now, the caveat to that is, once you know what your interests are, you do have to cone down a little bit. You can't do every case. You can't do all the research projects. So for me, I got rid of hip arthroscopy, thank God. For Eric Hansen and Jen Lane and Nikki, they were there when I first did hip scopes, and they will probably already all nod and say, yeah, I shouldn't be doing hip scopes. But I also learned for other things, research. I really like the basic and translational work. I like clinical research, but other people are better at it than me. So I'm happy to be a part. I love mentoring, but my passion is in the basic and translational research. I love education. I don't necessarily like all the rules of education, so I try to keep that in a box, and I tolerate the administrative stuff pretty well. Caveat to all this, don't keep all the titles, spread them around. Number 4, choose your mentorship team well. And then if you aren't sure, you bring them to Hawaii and see how they tolerate Hawaii. If they tolerate Hawaii, then it's a pretty good group. Again, the mentorship checks all the boxes. These are 2 papers I really like that I've read multiple times. This is the value of senior membership among orthopedic surgeons. It was published a few years ago. It shows that top-down approach that we've started in the Mentor College is really, really important. And this is an old paper by Sam Mehta, but the value of mentorship in resident education. And from a resident's perspective, it's always undervalued, and we can always strive to do better. So this is my selfish interpretation of how the world works. This is me. I have people that I will go to for career advice, research, education, people who are supposed to send me pictures of cells on Fridays, and people to keep me in check to make sure I'm not being too much of an ass. And this is important because I don't want those groups to necessarily always overlap. If I only have one mentor, it's not going to be effective. But if I have different people that I can reach out to when I'm having questions or struggles, it's going to be a more effective mentorship team, and I try to at least help some of these people, not all of them. Just kidding. And then probably the most important thing is to be deliberate about time management. And this can be a whole separate talk. And to be fair, giving a 20-minute talk on how to balance your life and seeing that time is running out when I get to this part is a little bit daunting. Most of what I know I learned from this guy. I'm his tadpole to his rather large bullfrog. Dr. Bozic is many things, but he is a wonderful mentor when it comes to time management. Time management is going to give you intellectual stimulation, the ability to innovate and create. If you don't have that time, you're not going to be able to. It'll give you opportunities to advance by being more streamlined, and it gives you back that feeling of balance. So no matter what you look at online, there's 15 secrets, 10 secrets, 7-minute abs, whatever you look at, there's the 2 things that come up the most. Get organized. So for me, that means the day before I look at my clinic patients. It's painful, I hate it, but then clinic is smooth. I don't have any surprises. The other thing that comes up is the most important task in the morning. I try to get to work early, not crazy early, but early enough to avoid seeing children in the morning, because that's kind of a mess. I learned that during COVID. But then I focus, when my brain is focused, I try to get that one thing I need to get done before everything else starts. And then I know I can at least check that box off. The other rule that comes up over and over is what was appropriately termed, just go to the shed. You go someplace and you're like, I'm going to take care of that later. How many of you have looked in your email today, checked an email and went, shit, I'm going to look at that later? Or everybody who checked Apex and you didn't take care of something in that inbox. That was useless time. There's 100% useless time. Get this stuff done. Get it done every single day. And you're going to make your patients happy, your colleagues happy, and the people that you work with happy. How many of you are good multitaskers? You know it's a fake question then. All right, so nobody, 2% are good multitaskers, but multitasking is not necessarily the right term for it. It's called switch tasking. Multitasking is like you can drive a car. Multiple things go so you can drive a car. Switch tasking we're actually really bad at. For the 2%, you're even not very efficient at it. You'll lose about 50% of capacity. So once you start doing a task, keep doing it, get it done before you move on, which is really, really, really hard. So we have a phone, we have a computer, they all ding at us. But the more I've tried this in the last few years, the better I've been at actually getting stuff done. In terms of being time efficient, I brought this up earlier, but don't put things off. Once you say yes, the classic one is a meeting. Rosie says, I want to meet with you. I say, great, I don't want to meet with you. How about June? Well, June gets really, really busy because you've put 7 different things there. So once you say yes, schedule it soon and get it done. If you don't want to do it, just say no. Again, if I say, Rosie, I'm sorry, I don't have time to meet, say, all right, I'll move on. Drew, when can we meet? I'm going to skip this, but basically that's when I mess that up. And know your limits. I learned this during COVID. How many of you have changed your grid from before and after COVID from scheduling for faculty? Yeah, so at least half of us. What I learned is I can't see 40 patients. I'm miserable. Clinic staff is miserable. My patients were late. I was late coming home. Things weren't done. So I switched. I won't see more than 36 patients. That seems to be an amazing sweet spot. I don't know why, but I can do that. I'm done. I'm usually done before Drew. I'm always done before Ben. And everything else is done. Be honest about your time in the OR. It really makes a big difference to everyone around you. Can you really do that case in 1 hour? You probably can't. If you can, great, but be honest about it because it makes everybody else happier and it keeps your own stress level down. What tool do you use most at work? Anybody? No, we're orthopedic surgeons. It's not brain. All right, well, the residents answered for us, so it's your EHR. So we spend more than 70% of the time on our EHR, and my last bit of advice is to be efficient with it. It really does suck. Everything else has told us it sucks. There's a lot on it. If you go to Reddit and type in on Reddit, if you type in Epic, there's a lot of stuff on how much this is bad. But it's part of our job. So I don't like laundry, but I still do laundry. I feel like Apex is my work version of laundry. So we have a session coming up. Attend sessions. Work on making yourself better. If I told you that there was a technique online that will save you 10 minutes every OR case that you do, we would all watch it. Or there's a really cool distal tibial allograft video, we'd watch it. But if I said, hey, there's something that's going to save you 2 minutes per patient, but it's on Apex, and you're going to have to learn a new smart phrase, you'd be like, fuck off, we're not going to do that. Oops, never mind. And then I think the worst possible thing we've done with Apex is we made people like me subject matter experts. I don't have time to do that. We should have somebody from Apex or from the hospital working with us to improve our efficiency consistently, because otherwise it's really not going to get done. Last things really quick. Look back at why it's working. Do I have time for it? Be okay to say, I don't really have time. Will I like this again in a year? What are going to be the big transitions coming up? Is there somebody else that would be better than this right now? So especially a lot of our leadership things, you might be good at it now, you might not be good at it in 5 years. Be prepared to hand that off. When it's not working, is this a modifiable problem? If it's not modifiable, don't stress so much about it. You can't keep asking for the same thing over and over if it's not a fixable problem. If it is modifiable, how much effort is it going to take to change? Because it may be modifiable, but it might take years and years and years of your effort. That might not be worth it either. So does this lead to balance? I think this is the quintessential problem, is that we look at it as work is bad and life is good. And I can personally attest to there have been years that my life was a lot worse than work, and I really look forward to coming to work to avoid life. So I like to look at it like this, and this is a $2,500 table, so it's a little bit harder. But the more little things that keep me balanced, and the more I can look at every little thing, then I feel like it's a bit easier to feel sane, and I don't have to rely on one thing to make me happy. Lots of little things can make me happy. And if all else fails, like was mentioned earlier, we have a really, really cool job. Like, there's no way around it. If I had looked at myself 30 years ago and said, I'm going to be doing what I'm doing, I would have been stoked. I also thought I was going to work in a pet store. So, things are looking up. Embrace the things that make you happy, no matter what it is. It's okay to like work. I really like science. I really like operating. I also really like talking fish with Charlie Kogan. And then last but not least, Dr. Diab said I had to quote Socrates, but I didn't know exactly who Socrates was, and I didn't know which quote to use, so I used this one, and thank you.